And for anybody that's listening to us right now, can you, um, Shuff, why don't you speak so I can make sure that the our listeners are able to hear you? More important that they can hear me. So just talk for a couple seconds and make sure that you're able to hear.
No problem, man. We'll dive into the Hart Sellers Act, the McCarran and Waters Act. We're going to go into the Emily Lazarus poem that everybody wants to always bring up. And we're going to go all the way into things that people might really find interesting and how they've been duped.
Okay. And yes, I am retarded. So anyway, one of the things I want to start off with. So I want you to start. I want you to start. I'm. What happens at the border? Some of the protocols. Why is it? Does it look like we're? I don't want to. I don't know the term I want to use, but let's say that we are. The people are complaining that we are firing on young children and women, where in fact that's not necessarily the case. So, do me a favor. Start on that first, and then as we progress, we will, cover some more material.
Yeah, no problem. It's by design. The NGOs, non-governmental organizations, what they're doing is this is PAD. This has been going on since the 60s. And so here's what I'm telling you. What you saw today was nothing more than pepper guns, which the pepper guns basically are paintball guns and they have pepper balls in them. You saw a bunch of mace. You saw the defense of our border in that manner. That is totally justifiable. And it is what their job is to do with CBP. Those are CBPOs. Those are Border Patrol agents. And there's probably some Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. But by law, we're not talking about delving into posse comitatus. All we're talking about is the National Guard can do even more. Me and Georgios, after we left active duty, we both served in the National Guard in the state of Ohio. Kent State happened in our state, and they were totally justified. You didn't see prosecutions out of that. Everything's got to go to court. And there's an old adage on the federal side is that you've arrived when you've had something go to federal court, i.e. the Supreme Court, and had it held by the Supreme Court. And so even the military, though, here's the difference, here's the rub. We did a show about this the other day, and I said this is justifiable. The military, posse comitatus applies everywhere, but border nexus. The military has a clear and present duty to protect our borders. And that is in the Constitution, folks. Enemies, foreign and domestic. The borders are international borders. Canada or Mexico, matters not. And the military can stand on those borders all day long. The thing is, because of political correctness and the BS, they have to have CBPOs or somebody with them.
Now, the CBPO is a Customs and Border Patrol officer,
Customs and Border Protection officer. Everything falls under CBPO, from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Also, why am I mind dumping? Border Patrol. They're all CBP, but CBPO is the person who controls that entry point, whether it be land, sea, or air.
Now, and for those people that are listening, I want to just cover a couple technical terms for that. All the CBPOs that are on the border are FLETC. They had gone to FLETC.
Yep.
They are not. They are armed. They are also in doing so, they have to have a strict compliance to the United States Code and also to the laws of however you want to phrase them, but they have to follow set laws by the government that have been in place for the not just recently under Trump administration, but from the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965.
Well,
So
that was the last one that was. Well, it's not the last one. There's been numerous variations. You have to understand the law with immigration and customs changes constantly. Customs is all by regulation, and regulation done by force is law. Because if I can shoot you for doing something like bringing drugs across the border, which, you know, then that's a regulation I'm upholding. But a regulation that can be used by force is de facto a law. Immigration,
right.
that falls under the INA, Immigration and Naturalization Act. At one point, DOJ, Department of Justice, had immigration officers at the borders. Customs was Department of Treasury. They were at the borders, okay? They amorphed with each other, and Customs itself were customs agents, okay? And you had immigration officers. That became CBP at the borders. We can go into the agents and the differences, but that's really a lot of autistic minutia, and I don't really want to. But they got Nexus. So that's why the computer systems and the things that are used expand. Now, when Homeland took over, it used to be that they were a separate agency with, and they actually have more authority than anybody besides the CBPO. CBPOs have a lot of authority, folks, at that border, because all your rights, constitutional rights, are suspended. The only one that has more authority than them, and I mean this, are the people that work in the Coast Guard. Well, they're in Homeland, and they're also pulled into CBP under that umbrella. And so all these nexuses come together. And what you're seeing is, this started after 9/11, by the way. After 9/11 happened, the reorganization of all the federal agencies happened. ATF, which should never have been brought into DOJ, they were fine in Treasury. They are revenuers. They enforce taxation of guns. They enforce taxation of alcohol and tobacco. That is their mission statement. And they never belonged to go to DOJ. That's where the perversion started. They are the most corrupt federal agency. So, but I'm veering off. And you saw what was once a stellar law enforcement agency, the FBI, become polluted. And DOJ, you can't dump dirty water into clean water.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the issues, and here's one of the issues too. So one of the arguments is that the people at the border are refugees and asylum seekers. Now, explain to that, what is the protocol? Because this is something that has been up for debate. Explain what is the protocol for asylum seekers and refugees at the border, and why people are getting upset that people are not, they're getting upset at people saying, oh, we're I don't know, we're attacking women and children.
Yeah, no, that's not up for debate, actually. Everybody knows this is by design, okay? It'd be no different than all those crying kids at Kent State, right? The children are being used as human shields. This is what they're doing. This is what they did in Europe. It's a flat invasion. I know, all of us are veterans on the VRS, the Veterans Radio Syndicate. So the Bear News, we're all veterans. And most of the people that work for CBP, they want to do their job, they want to do it correctly, and they want to protect that Constitution. Remember that little thing we all swore that oath to that said, I don't remember there ever being this thing that said I had a limit as to when I had to stop supporting that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. this is an internal struggle we're having right now. And this is an issue, folks. And if you're an American, whether you're on the left or the right, that's why do you think you have, for 2 years, been so divided? Because they know if you're divided, you won't stand for what's right, even in our military. And they believe this will happen.
Right. And one of the other things, too, is that, they were offered asylum from Mexico.
Right.
And my whole thing is that they okay, let's take a step back.
Okay.
When they're offered asylum from a country,
right?
Explain that process. Whether asylum is from the United States or from any other country, explain that process.
Well, if they want to get asylum, the first step they can do in their country, like most of these are Venezuelan Marxist. You guys got to grasp what I'm telling you. A lot of these folks are not coming from the countries they're telling you they're coming from. OTMs, other than Mexicans, are the largest contingent. It's not Mexicans that cross that border. I mean, they can cross, but they usually come over and go back home. And also scheme off our government for welfare or whatever. It's a fact that happens, but whatever. It's a small contingent, whatever. The largest is OTMs, other than Mexicans. Now, we are having destabilization ops run within our own government, by our own government, because they don't like the outcome of elections. And we're also seeing it from outside, willing accomplices. In USAID, folks, I've worked for them before as a contractor. USAID, they are State Department, but they are the friendly face of the CIA. And
explain what the USAID
it's just USA. I don't want to get into all of what it means, but I'm just saying it's
right. But
USA.
they're acting under the agent of the United States government. They're not, they're not contractors.
They're not an NGO. No contractor. They purport themselves to be NGOs. They're not. They run under the auspices and funding of state. And they use contractors just like State Department does. Everybody out there that contracts knows that I'm not BSing. You get paid to protect people in State Department. You get paid to protect, and most of us are military, former military.
And for those that haven't looked, me and you worked for DynCorp, and we did the same thing it was under contract of the United States government. And so,
right.
And we've had this discussion before because one of the things that when we've talked about DynCorp, when we've talked about contractors, a lot of the times you don't have enough personnel, let's say, to be able to cover force protection or the mission at hand,
right.
Where there's just not enough. You just don't have enough.
Department, you don't have enough DSS agents, and they go through FLETC too.
Right.
You have all these people coming in. Your RSO. I mean, there's so much we can talk about, but it just gets lost in the autism.
But again, it goes back to that. A lot of these here's what one of the arguments has been, and this is why it doesn't look right. Had they just gone through the process and not tried to breach the wall, the response from the United States would be much different.
Well, they could have done it at their embassy. That's the whole thing. It was originally supposed to be done at the embassy of your country. And that was because of the 40s, which was the first perversion of the INA, because of World War II. And they wanted to bring a bunch of people over that, whatever. They came over. Don't want to really get into all that. But then you had it happen in 52 with McCarran. And guess what he did? Just like McCarran. Remember that little Las Vegas airport that's named after that guy? McCarran
right.
and Waters. That act allowed them to bring in foreigners of a different stripe. And even before then, this is back in the 1800s. Shai Lung versus Freeman. Okay? Shailen versus Freeman was about prostitutes coming over from China. And we had a clause in that, you know, and it's still in the INA. You have national policy and port policy. And
that's the next thing I want you to cover is port policy, because there are protocols in a port to whether you let asylums in, immigrants in.
It's not just asylum; it's everything. Port policy. Okay, it's supposed to be national policy. National policy is what you saw exercised on the border today. Okay, that is national policy. Port policies can dilute it, and it trumps national policy. Unless you have a locked step CBP, okay, and guard and all of it. Unless everybody's in agreement, you can have a port director that decides, screw that, I'm going to do this because I want to. And he can undermine it.
So let me ask you this. If there's an argument, now I regardless of where the argument comes from, but one of the arguments has been is that they are supposed to let asylum seekers into the country. Okay?
No, they're not supposed to, but...
Okay, hold on. Do me a favor. Explain the technical process for that. Not, because here's one of the issues, and here, this is from. I'm going to just say that the what I've seen is the most on the threads is that the optics of firing tear gas and pepper spray just doesn't look good. Now, regardless of whether it's correct or the optics don't look good. What I'm saying is that people have this misconception or this belief that they are supposed to just let asylum seekers into the country. Can you explain just on that specificality of the asylum seekers? Not and then we can expand to the port policy.
If they get into the country, they will be given shelter, unfortunately. That's port policy. Just about everywhere. It's not national policy, but it's port policy. National policy is they're supposed to apply from outside the country at an embassy. That is national policy. If they arrive at the border, and that's why I brought up the Chinese thing, because they used habeas corpus. This is where the legal gymnastics come in. And so all these prostitutes were let in from China back in the day. And whenever habeas corpus gets its nose under the legal, and I'm not a lawyer, folks, I just know how the law's affected. Clear, decisive decisions and perverted our immigration policy, which should never have gotten to the point that it is now. It's my 2 cents. You guys can believe it or disbelieve it. Look this stuff up. It's your own bag, man. You're all veterans listening to this, I guarantee. And you can all make a difference. But the problem is, you can all join CBP. Go be a CBPO. Learn what it is. Go through FLETC. Learn the INA.
Right.
Learn the customs regulations. Learn USC.
Well, and here's I think that the problem is that the press isn't telling the real truth, because asylum seekers have to be you can't tell me that somebody breaching the wall is an asylum seeker. That and that's one of the things.
They're not. They're invaders. That is an invasion cut and dried.
And if an asylum seeker asks to be let in, I am seeking asylum, which was let's take a look at the under the Clinton administration. The Land on Shore Act, which is basically if you could set foot on American soil and you were Cuban, or I think it was Haitian, I'm not sure about that one, but if you're Cuban, they let you into the country. They gave you automatic asylum. So, but they weren't invading, and I think that's one of the issues behind it.
No, it was what you're talking about is dry foot, wet foot.
Right.
Okay, you wanna explain to everybody what that is, man? Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's what I want you to explain.
All right, all right. Dry foot, wet foot basically went like this. If you had wet feet, you didn't make it to the beach, you are going to be able to be deported. If you have dry feet, you've made it to the beach, you now are a U.S. citizen. And it was for Cubans only because they were fleeing communism. It was one of the things Kennedy put in. We're talking about JFK. We're not talking about Teddy the Swimmer Kennedy. We're talking about the last actual.
Yeah, but Teddy was an MP, and you can't.
Yeah, I know. But what I was saying again is he was the co-signator of a lot of things, including the Hart-Sellers Act. And that is what diluted. And he gave assurances. You guys can look this up. It would not change the social fabric of America. Is there anybody here that can say the American social fabric has been changed? Georgios and he's an immigrant. And
right.
Guess what?
But we came here legally.
Hold on and let me finish. He came here and assimilated along with his father, who was a great man. We have people that refuse to assimilate, who push their religion, who want Sharia. We have people also that come here and will fly only their national flag from their old country and never fly the red, white, and blue. Is that assimilation? I hold my German and Italian culture sacred. Georgios holds his Greek culture sacred. But we also will only wave the red, white, and blue and wear it on our bodice.
Well, we fly, me and you both fly two flags. We fly the EGA and we fly the American flag.
Exactly.
And that is, and those are the two flags that I can, what do you call it? Those are two flags I fly. I don't, but here's the thing. I fly the stars and stripes above all others.
Right.
And one of the arguments has been, and this is where optics sometimes makes a big deal about this. In one of the arguments has been, we've had foreign nationals immigrate to the United States since the beginning of the United States. One of the biggest arguments has been, and in all of the history of the United States, you didn't have to press 2 for German, you didn't have to play 3 for Italian, 4 for for Greek. The argument was that if you come here and you assimilate, people, it's great that we did transactions in English, we did transactions in English. My dad had to pass the boiler test, he had to do it in English. There was no provisions for him to take it in a foreign language to become a boiler operator. And one of the arguments is, and it's a valid argument, is if you're going to come over here, you don't want to be an exclusion class, which means that we've got to speak to you in a different language, and that we have to accommodate you for religious exemptions. We have to come over here and say, I don't know what else you want to exclude, whether it is
accommodation is nothing more than capitulation.
Right. And
there's somebody on my chat right now that Attendo Fabrizio. He's from Italy. He immigrated here the right way. I knew him as he was going through the process. And I talked to him. And I was like, good man. He spoke English. Great guy. Has his own channel on YouTube. People don't get it. There's something that we have a disconnect with right now, is that if you come over here, you want to speak your own language. Look, in your house, you spoke Greek. I know this for a fact. And you still speak it today. And that's flavor. That is America. The problem is, You don't do it outside. Neither did your father. Your father had a thick accent. You have no accent. You sound like the fucking hillbilly you are, like I am. We both went to Wesleyan High School.
Right.
We're not better than anybody else. And we assimilated. We became one nation. This division bell that has been rung, folks, is a false thing, and they are doing it to subvert our nation. Flying a foreign flag? Yeah, let me throw a flippin' Nazi flag up. See if you guys like that. You wouldn't, would you? And I wouldn't like it either.
Right, or better yet, I'll give you a flag that I'll give you a flag that pisses me off more than that. Fly the Che Guevara flag, or fly the hammer and sickle flag.
You can do that here in America now. It's okay. The colleges tell you it's okay. You can go outside Tucker Carlson's house and break in his front door and almost flipping cause a entry into his house and scare his wife and kids to death and do real terrorism. But you know who they're going to come see? Some guy that gets captured on CNN that might be bodyguarding somebody else but gets captured next to some ass bag. You know, the whole thing is muff fake, built to destroy this nation right now. And it started in 2016 when they did not like the results of the fucking election.
Well, and that is one of the things that, here's one of the issues that people have argued about too, is that that one of the things that happened in 2016 is that you had, people marching, they started marching towards, I don't know, whatever, they came in and when they protested in Portland, they protested in, what was the other place that they protested? They protested in Washington, D.C., and they set cars on fire. And, that was one of the things that I keep, I point out is, wait a second, you're sitting there calling the right, antagonistic military, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. But wait a second, the left was the one that started burning cars, started attacking, processes, and has gone to the tune of, well, wait a second, we're going to do what we want to do. And here's one of the reasons why this narrative.
And George, even funnier, I'm going to interrupt you right now. Where's the anti-left, or the left that was anti-war? They're gone. Where's Occupy Wall Street? Where are the Black Bloc? Those Black Bloc back in the day, oh, wait, they were what were they? Oh, anti-capitalist. And now they're anti-American. They're flying they were anarchists too. They were flying the hammer, or back in the day it was the red and black flag. They still do fly that, by the way. But they're now flying the hammer and sickle. And yet they're Maoist. Their indoctrination through the colleges are no longer Marxist. It's Maoist. And the retardedness of it is what happened on Mao's Long March. He killed the college professors. He killed the students that helped him get to power. How many million? We're talking hundreds of millions of people were killed under Marxism. But that's okay in America today to be that way. And if somebody wants to call me a fascist, whatever, okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. I was called that as a military policeman, both in the Army and the Marine Corps back in the 80s, when fascists actually, they knew what they were talking about when they were saying fascist, which was BS because of Ronald Reagan. I've not seen this much hate since Reagan, except it's on steroids and retarded now.
Well, and here's one of the things. Here's one of the things that I point out is that when you're sitting there talking about the left and this argument, one of the things that I want to point out is that people are not as willing to agree when it's a false narrative. And let's give you. I want to point something out to you and to our listeners. When we were MPs and I just want to use I just want to use this as an example. You were a CID agent. I was not. I was never with there. But you were a CID agent. One of the things that we had to do, and we were taught how to write reports for the DIA, and we just to hand them up. They were not anything special, but
they're just brush reports. Yeah.
Yeah, brush reports. They weren't anything special. They weren't like, oh, we were in some clandestine. No, they were just reports that you handed out. And when Trump put the travel ban on the 7 countries, those were the 7 countries that guess what they had in common. There was no DIA presence in those countries, and there was no SOFA agreement with those countries at all whatsoever. So you didn't know what vetting process they were using to get people over here. And
shit, we didn't have a SOFA agreement with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in my first conflict in the Near East, and I'm 50 years old, and I've spent a quarter of my life in the goddamn Near East. And when we went over for the first Gulf War, there was no SOFA agreement with Saudi Arabia. There was the Kingdom. There was no SOFA agreement with Kuwait. And we had a loose...
There was no... Well, hold on.
Hold up.
At the same time, there was no SOFA...
Let me finish. We had a loose agreement with Saddam Hussein because he was CIA funded. We did have a looser agreement with him. It was not a SOFA, but there was an agreement. So when we're going to talk, we better talk honestly.
No, but
like we do about Afghanistan.
We were in Doha, and there was no SOFA agreement. I'm saying not with Qatar, not with Bahrain, not with any of them. So those things didn't happen until much later. And here's the issue that people are, again, one of the things I want to point out is that when you're crossing the border, and this is why it's important to understand processes instead of just saying, oh, it's just, we hate the Orange Man is bad. One of the things that we did in Kosovo, which is, and this is something that, and this is, I was there 20 years ago. It hasn't changed. One of the things that they allow you, and it's it's a United States protocol, you are allowed to use the Bible. If you have a family Bible, you can use it as both a birth certificate and a form of family ID.
Right.
Now, explain that, and how that hasn't changed in 20 years.
Well, it's not going to change because families in America, here's the thing about culture. Whether you like it or not, America is a Judeo-Christian culture. And I'm not going to get into the ethos and the different autism on it. But Bibles in America, just like if you got pulled over in our state, the state of Ohio, okay? If you got pulled over on the way to church, believe it or not, it's in the ORC, the Ohio Revised Code, and you're on the way to church, the police are not supposed to stop you from getting to church. They can arrest you later, but unless you've done something serious, a felony or something, they should not stop you to go worship, okay? They can get you later. They can get you right after church. They can park out there and wait till you come back out and get you then. That's actually in the ORC. For a traffic ticket or something, Highway Patrol, we have a Highway Patrol, not a state police.
Right.
A sheriff's deputy, a city cop, should allow you to still continue on to your church. Get some churching in you, okay? They can get you later. They can always come to you anytime. An investigation can last years. It doesn't start it doesn't start to become serious until they actually get a grand jury assembled, and they can get you then. Now, here's the problem. Our states, because of, whether you like it or not, the War of Northern Aggression, that's what they call it in the South, or our Civil War, the fact remains states' rights got watered down. And the federal government, but in Ohio, we still have tight controls. That's why if you ever get visited by somebody that's on some JTTF, they're going to be city and local cops from somewhere near, because they really don't have any authority unless the sheriff says, yeah, you can come on in because you now have got a grand jury assembled and they said it's a true bill. It's not a no bill. These are real things.
And Ohio has, and for those people that haven't listened to about Ohio, Ohio has in the last few years has had a couple of cases of jury nullification, which is not,
Right.
which really hasn't happened in a lot of other states, and I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that that more people here in Ohio are less likely to be, say what you want to say about the outside of the Buckeye fans. A lot of people here in Ohio are they're numerally, they're swing states. Ohio's voted blue, is voted red. It's a much different state than most. I mean, we as a group don't just vote down party lines like some states. California hasn't voted, for a Republican president since 1984. So, where Columbus, Ohio splits based on the candidate, which is kind of, willing to say, hey, listen, that's not a bad thing.
It doesn't really split on a candidate. It splits in the cities. And that's normal for most states now. The cities, all you have to go is look, George, where we grew up, man. When we grew up, we used to joke around. I mean, all through high school, I dated a black girl. George knows this. Everybody knows this. I'm honest and open about it. I don't care. Anyways, here's the deal. We had a very mixed school. Very mixed. And the thing about it was we called ourselves hillbillies and brobillies. We may have our fights behind Frank's parking lot, and we may settle scores, whatever, but at the end of it, we'd buy each other a beer afterwards and laugh about it because we were little punks.
Right.
That's what we've lost in our America that we have now.
Well, and I think part of it too is the fact that, when people, one of the things that's really irritating, and I've heard this on numerous groups, okay, is the amount of screeching that is going on is just absolutely
retarded.
Just demonic. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it.
It's retarded. It's retarded.
Yeah,
and I mean it. I don't mean it to make fun of special needs. It's retarded mentally for a normal human being.
Right, and here's the thing that one of the things that we've always argued, and this is something that people have said time and time again: tell the truth. We don't want your version of the truth. Just tell the truth. Let me decide on it. Because here's one of the things that, you're sitting there talking about. One of the things I want to talk about is port of entry. Okay?
Right. About
when you're talking about a port authority has the right to conduct affairs in order. I want to go back to that and visit that because that's also important. Because one of the things we didn't cover is they closed the port of San Diego. Explain to that what that mechanism is and how it affects the people coming across and the people that are willing to, that are doing it legally and illegally, and what that entails from a command and control issue.
All right, now you have to understand port policy. It's been a long time since I've been doing this, since I've been contracting. You know what's up,
right?
And port policy can always change, honestly. And it probably.
Well, I'm not talking about port policy. I'm talking about what it takes to change.
You are. Let me finish what I was saying. A policy can be changed at a whim, okay? But if you're coming across like they did today, okay? We talked about this yesterday on my podcast. And I told you this was what would probably be the likely outcome. And it was. They pushed them back. probably if you got through, whatever. And they've all been coached. That's another thing nobody wants to talk about. That dirty little secret out lawyers are going over there. And that little secret is they're telling them what to say to get into our country. They're subverting. The lawyers who are doing it should actually be held for treason. Because, especially if you can go look at the people they're representing and find out the nation states they're coming from, which you now have a failed state down there. Starts with a V. You guys can all look up that nation state's name. I don't really want to say it. They're communist. And
right.
And yet we're supposed to accept these people coming in. Do you think our last elections did not get voted on by people that were here illegally? Do you really think this? Folks, wake up. You're being undermined in your own nation state. Except, wait, we're borderless. The globalists said so. We need to let everybody in. Look at how successful that's been in Europe. Look at...
Oh, my God.
They talk all the crap about white supremacists and right-wing. Look at where the violence is coming from. Muslims and also Marxist communists. That's where it's coming from, folks. Antifa is not... they're a terrorist organization, to be sure, but they're not white supremacists. They're globalists. They are supporting everything, enemies, foreign and domestic. You remember that part of your little oath you swore?
Well, I almost joined the Marine Corps, so you explain that to me.
Well, I don't know, man. I never joined anything, man. I haven't done anything in my life. All I did was, I'm just a traveler. You know that, brother.
Yeah, I'm short and frail, so I have a hard time getting, I have to kind of be quiet because I don't want to have to get into a fight with anybody.
Yeah, that scares me too, man. I run away from every fight. People are scary.
But here, I want to point something out. And I want to discuss this for a second because it's something we talked about on your, when we were talking about things that are counterintuitive. And I want to say this, and this is between, this is because I've seen, I don't know how to put this in context, but I've seen a lot of guys out there that comment that don't have the institutional memory of, they just don't have the institutional knowledge of what it's supposed to look like, so they think they know what it's supposed to look like. One of the arguments one of the things that we got in an argument about was how people look when they've actually been into combat and how they carry their kit and their gear when they've actually had to do a patrol, an operation, a security detail, or something like that. And one of the things that we've seen, and me and Shuff are very critical of, is when you see people debate the non-technical side of something because it doesn't look right to them. And so one of the things that I point out, me and you did maritime security. I've never known a human being. Now, there might be a guy out there. I just don't know him. He might be that guy. I've never seen anybody take more than 14 mags on a load with a rifle. I mean, with it, whether it's an M4, an M16, anything that I've never seen anyone carry more than 14 mags. And I've seen guys that are sitting there. Now, even at 14 mags, that's a hell of a load. Most people carry between 8 and 10. Why? Because it's damn fucking heavy. And you're having to hump around in some place that you don't know you might not know the terrain, you're not familiar with it, and these people are sitting there, going, oh, that just doesn't, I would do this or I would do that. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't look right to you because you've never been there. And
okay, go on.
And here's the thing. If you take a look at one of the things that me and you have, we've argued with people, not just on this show, but on other shows. if you do maritime security, and me and you've done VBSS teams, you get a shitload of what's called sea mirage. So that's why you need weapons like I carried H&K 53 because it had a ghost ring and it didn't give me sea mirage. I also carried an FNFAL. Why? Because it was less likely to give me a sea mirage without the optics. Well, here's the thing. People go, well, I would do this and I would carry this or I would carry that. Well, yeah, until you actually have to carry it, and then you realize, well, shit, that didn't work out the way that I expected it to. And part of the things is that you're looking at, here's one of the things that, one of the reasons why we're stopping the people at the border and not letting them, and we're repelling them from coming in, is we don't know who they are. That's the cornerstone. We don't know the people breaching the wall, whether they're Mexicans, Venezuelans, Honduran, ISIS,
Exactly.
Tom Brady fans.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah. They could be Hulk Hogan lovers. We don't know who they are, and that's the problem. You and I, we've carried magazines. It's funny. Cold Warrior on my page said I would carry 14 fags. He's a great guy. He's a funny motherfucker.
Well, he's probably much stronger and bigger than I am. So God bless the kid.
Yeah, well,
God bless.
I don't think he is, bro. But what I'm saying is, it's hilarious. The magazines you carry. I remember talking to Vietnam vets that were carrying grease guns in the jungle, and they'd say they like have 6 or 7, and you know how fast a grease gun goes through rounds. 45 ACP.
I've never seen more than what it was like 10 or 12 because those things are heavy. I mean, those things are
heavy mags. They're still mags, but the thing is,
and they were what the grease gun had a 20 round mag, and I think it had a 30. It had 3 different mags. It had a 10, 20, and 30. Right?
I believe so. Yeah. But here's what he said. He said he would throw the majority of his mags in his rucksack with a lot of loose ammo so he could reload when he got a .2. But he would say, he'd have like maybe 20 total, but most of them were in his rucks. He had like 6 or 7 out to where he could deal with 7, I think, because he said there were 3 stick mag pouches, if I remember him correctly, that they actually used for the 30 rounders. And I could be off, so if I am, I stand corrected. But I'm going from 1988 when I talked to this gentleman, Vietnam vet. Wounded in the head, by the way, from a SKS that fired at him, hit a tree branch. He wasn't wearing a helmet like an idiot. That's what that Marine Master Sergeant told me. And he had,
by the way, on a side note, on the M3,
nice little dimple in his forehead where the bullet just hit his skull and stopped. It knocked him out. It didn't kill him.
On a side note, my dad actually, my dad carried the M3 grease gun.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, when he was in the Greek army, actually issued those. And I'm looking through, but going back to what we were saying is that a lot of people look at stuff and they're saying, oh, they're shooting,
but going back
I don't know, whatever you want to call them, that they're,
they're saying,
they're shooting the women and kids, of course.
A lot
because
of people.
Here's one of the other issues. Here's one of the other points that I want to bring up too, is if you break containment, okay, and I'll give you an example that me and you discussed about when we were at the UN camps in Somalia. We separated, at the place in Badoa where they had the camp. You separated women and children. Why? Because first of all, you don't know who's who,
and you don't know if the kids are being trafficked.
Even back then, and Well, and here's the thing: it's the same thing that happened in Kosovo. We just had here less than a month ago, 130 kids that were being in traffic were caught in Toledo in Michigan. That's not that's not accidental. In Toledo, which if you've ever been through Toledo, it'll take you 5 minutes to go through. The population is what, 150? Let's just pull that up. What's the population of Toledo? 150, 200,000?
Roughly, probably. But the thing is, the one thing you'll see going up there, the missile towers. That's what we used to like to call them. It's the
270.
It's the minarets for the mosque. And
it's 276,000 thing. But again, it goes back to there's a story that just came out as well, and I want to point this one out, is that there was a one of the things that happened was that in a mall, 4 kids stopped a child because they didn't think that the person with him was dad. And I'm going to tell you this: my son, anybody that has seen my son, he is a carbon copy of me. He looks just like me. There is no possible. Same with you.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing: when I had to take him on TSA, they asked him who is the person with you, and he said, "Well, that's my that's my dad." But but again, there are people that are traveling when you're under 12, or you're under a certain age. You don't have ID. You don't know who the kid is, and so the optics don't look good when you have to separate kids, because they want it to be a wedge issue. But at the same time...
That's all it is a wedge issue, George. They know... Look, this stuff was started by Clinton. Clinton's the guy... And Obama did the same thing. Bush did the same thing. It's only because they don't like Orange Man bad, NPC good, you need to be NPC, don't think, be a no-player character, non-playing character. That's all this is. It's all muff fake, George. And when we get into it, Georgios, honestly, brother, it's so much muff fake, and it's being used divisionally to divide and conquer this nation, because they can't do it any other way. They tried for the Second Amendment for at least in my lifetime. Since I remember, since the 70s, when they wanted to take out those bad 38 special revolvers until women were like, we carry those so we don't get raped. They couldn't go after that. Hold on. They couldn't go after that. So then
but you made a valid point.
So then they went after the nasty assault rifles under Clinton. That sunsetted, thankfully, because it was retarded. It's the lowest weapon that's used in any crime. And then after that, now... they're not going after the Second Amendment directly. Now they're going after the First Amendment. Deplatforming. Take you off Facebook. Take me off Facebook. Take you off YouTube. Me off YouTube. Right. That's what they're doing, so we can't speak. Look, Alex Jones... Let me
make one. I want to, before you go too far off, I want to bring up a point that you discussed way earlier. Okay? And this on the 38 special, on the... and also the high point. The high point is, I don't know what the high point costs right now. It was $150, roughly, something like that. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. One of the things that you brought up was that it was an affordable, the Saturday night special, the 38 special, all of those, the Davis 25. Those were guns that were readily they were available inexpensively for those people that didn't have the monetary means to go out and buy a Kimber Combat 45 or a Wilson Combat 45, which are $1,100-$1,200.
Right. Right.
And so you could get a gun for self-defense. Now, granted, I mean, you're not going to go shoot IPSC with it. You're not going to go, you're not going to run, you're not going to use it in a 3-gun course. But at the same time, you've got access to a weapon that is $100, $125 in some places, and it works. And now maybe it's not, like I said, it's not going to be. You're not shooting an IPSC course. You're not shooting table 3. You're not doing a 3-gun match. No. But it gave you. But a 38 special is a fine weapon. I mean, Dragnet used it, and
what's the old adage, brother?
If it's simple,
all men are not created equal, but Smith and Wesson, Sam Colt made them that way.
And I think that the one thing that we've come back to is that at one point or another, the people want to. They're more concerned over optics than actual real world scenarios. Because here's one of the other things that nobody, that me and you haven't even discussed, and let's bring this up. How many of those kids or adults or women that are coming across the border are vaccinated? That you don't know.
That was brought up in your chat, and that's a very valid point, because they're not. And okay, Val, on my point, said I'm a little lost. I forget what we're talking about. No, we've gone a little over the gambit, but the thing is, Val, they're not vaccinated, more than likely. But in all honesty, how many of you Americans treasure the fact you don't have to vaccinate your kid if you don't want to? That kid can be vaccinated at any time. With the autism and everything that's going on now, if you don't think there's a link to that, I believe our President Trump understands.
Well, here's the thing. It's not.
Hold on.
Okay.
I believe President Trump and Barron has the effects of vaccination, and I think if he doesn't push anything, I don't think even with the whole Hillary investigation, he's not pushing this. He just said, look into this, and the DOJ can do it or not do it. They don't have to bend his will. He's not an emperor. But same with vaccination. I think he will be the one president that will say, let's actually get real science involved and find out whether vaccination is a good or a bad. I mean, there are certain things we know that's good. We don't want to bring in diseases we've already conquered. But guess what? All those things we thought we conquered, they're coming back again.
Well, because let's be...
Thanks to a turd world.
Well, but here's one of the things about the vaccines. Let's do two separations. If you're talking about autism is not caused by vaccines. If you're going to tell me that, hold on. Let me finish. There's no neurological pathogens in vaccines that can trigger autism.
Yes, there are.
Now, we can disagree on this, but here's the argument. But that's all been debunked.
It's not been debunked.
It has.
Quit reading Snow.
Hold on for a second, Shuff. There's two classes of vaccines. If you want to argue that, say, I don't want my child vaccinated because I don't know what the problems are with it, and that's fine. That is that's a fine issue. If you want to say that I choose not to have my children vaccinated, and we are willing to take the risk that they might get measles, smallpox, any of that, that's fine. No issue about that. Because that's a completely different argument than saying what vaccines can and cannot do.
Watch a video called Vaxxed, and it's by a black geneticist, a great guy, and he's a scientist too. And you will find out there are more people. It's just like global warming. There's more people that disagree with global warming than agree with it. Scientifically, okay? And the globe will always warm, and it will cool too, because that's the nature of it. God created this planet. I don't care if we let off every nuke on this planet. If God doesn't want the life to end on this planet, and you know this as an Orthodox man, if God does not want this planet annihilated, we could light off every nuke, every country can do it all at once, and guess what? There will still be life here.
Well,
it's folly for us to believe we can predict and know
that's fine, but we're going off the rail. Here's the issue
we're actually talking about a real subject now. It's not.
I understand that, but you know my stance on vaccines. And here's the one thing that I've always said. There are people that have reacted adversely to vaccines. No, there's no doubt about it. There are people that have been unvaccinated. Their kids have gotten autism. So if there are people that have had twins, both of them vaccinated, one kid's autism, one doesn't. The problem with creating
I think that's a made-up stat, because you know I'm a.
But here's the one.
Don't pull that, because you know where I'm going to go with this. Well,
I understand that, but Shuff, in the 10 years that I've argued with people on Facebook about vaccinations, no one has ever showed me the pathology of how vaccines
Let's get off vaccination, because I can see you're going full tism yourself. So you've been.
Well, no, I mean it's just here's my argument, and
slow your tism, and let's just go back to what we were talking about: immigration and
right.
The border
issue. There are too many risks with letting people breach the wall, and the argument. And here's the thing: how do you? Okay, let's take another position on this and use it differently. If you are the average layman, okay, let's say you're John Howard, you live in, let's say North Carolina, or, John Smith, you live in New York City, and you see what's going on the wall. And then you say to them, okay, look, and I don't know if the news they're getting has been doctored. I don't know what they're seeing is correct or not correct. How do you have a conversation with those people and saying, listen, what you're seeing isn't necessarily the truth, and what you're seeing, even though it looks wrong, isn't necessarily wrong?
Well, we're so divided, you can't do that anymore. Look, everybody's on the Fox side, they're on the MSNBC side, CNN side, fake news. They've stifled a lot of the real news, your real news. I try to be real news. I give my point of view, but I'm open and honest about it. Guess what, Fox, and guess what, CNN, MSNBC, and all NBC, ABC, CBS, they don't tell you they have their own biases, and they do. All of them do.
Right.
But they're the only true arbiter that anybody can say is Tucker Carlson. Yet he's a Nazi. He had Antifa show up at his house and try to break in. Now, barring that, the country's divided 50-50. So the great globalist scheme has worked. They've divided America. It hadn't happened, but it has now. So the fault lines are there, and they know they're there. So they're going to keep banging that sieve into the ground until they can get it to crack.
So how do you talk to a person?
Talk to them.
You've got to. You
cannot. They are steadfast. They will stand on their ground, and they will argue the point. I can call everybody who's been a president in my lifetime good and bad. I just said JFK was probably the last great Democratic president we've ever had. And I mean that. He would be considered a Republican. I've had a guy on my page who I respect highly say, oh, you can't even compare him to Trump. It took a Manhattan Democrat to bring the Republican Party back to where the Democratic Party used to stand.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things that, here's the one thing that it really surprises me, is that that people forget that just less than 10 years ago, Trump was a Democrat. And I mean, seriously, he was less than 10 years ago. Trump was a Democrat, and that he was, and he, for the most part, on social issues, really hasn't attacked a lot of social issues.
Not at all. You're right.
And I mean, he didn't reverse gay marriage or not at all. And people say, well, he has been, and one of the arguments has been, well, you guys are just Trump bots. No, here's the issue. Trump is a reaction to progressivism. And in the history of the world, and this is where I get an argument with people all the time.
Yeah, but progressivism...
Hold on. Let me finish what I'm about to say. Fascism has been around for hundreds of years. It's not a 20th century term. It is always, when fascism has risen, it has always came out to go again, or whatever you want to call it, nationalism, whatever you want to call it, it has always came against progressive liberals who want to change and destroy the mechanisms that made something.
Too many terms, bro, because you're wrong on all the terms and the way you're using them. Your terminology is so wrong.
Okay, it's not. I'm not wrong. You could say it's the classic model. You don't agree with the classic models that I bring up. That's the word.
No, George. No. The Overton window is very clear on this.
Okay, then why do you think that fascism has risen up? Why?
Okay, classical fascism. What is it? The state having an armed force to push corporatism, right? Because the state and corporate is one. Now, what's the deep state? Who got all the big money? Did Trump get it? No. It was Hillary. Who's the deep state that really runs things? And you know this, George. So please don't stand on a high horse and say incorrectly. The deep state runs things. Hold on. Deep state runs things. So who is their street soldiers? Antifa. So your fascism falls apart because that's under the communist banner now. But that truly,
there are terms today. I'm going to
fascism. Look, you're a liberal just like I am. We're classical liberals. Okay, Dave Rubin's a classical liberal. So is Tim Pool. They're classical liberals. Joe Rogan's a classical liberal. That means we're not ignorant and we didn't follow this path of racist, fascist, KKK, Donald Trump, go away. We didn't do that. Instead, we listened to the points of view. Nazism doesn't exist in America. Neo-Nazis, what is that, really? Neo? You're Neo? No, you're an ardent or you're a Nazi. A Neo, what the fuck is Neo? A Neo, you can be a Neo-con, you can be a Neo-liberal, which is what Hillary Clinton was, and they tried to foist that same Faustian bargain on us, just like they did with Bush and Kerry, just like they did with Bush and Gore. You had a neoliberal and a neocon, a neoconservative. They did that twice. They tried to do it again with Hillary. They wanted Jeb, a neocon, because they're the same fucking party.
Sure, but okay, let's take a step back on this. Okay, one of the things that since I've been on Facebook, I'm not going to say before Facebook, but since I've been on Facebook, the amount of classic terms that have been hijacked, I'm to the point anymore.
Poison.
No, but here's the thing that me and you have argued about this time and time again, and since I've been on Facebook, and I'm not talking about there's got to be a line between before Facebook and after Facebook. The number of terms that have been hijacked online have just gone. It's unbelievable. I'm to the point that I'm saying all the classical terms that I've learned and me and you learned, they're people have like using them for different sayings. And today,
Right.
one of the one of the issues that I have, one of the things that I've always said is that if you just took a look at certain Judeo-Christian principles and Western culture principles, okay, if you just focused on that lane right there, one of the most ardent Judeo-Christian principles and Western civilization, and it has been since the time of the Greeks, was the protection of private property.
Right.
Was property rights. Was the ability of someone to have basically to live in their house the way they saw fit.
Castle law.
The castle law. And that issue has been, of all the issues that I've ever seen that have been attacked by the left, and again, this is going back to, like I said, classical terms. One of the biggest issues has been is the left doesn't want you to have your own property rights. So they've done what's called statism. So the state tells you how much you can eat, how much you can, where you can fish, how much money you can make, because profits are dirty, so you have to give up your property rights. Why should you be able to live in a McMansion, make $200 million a year, when somebody that's not working gets to, basically live for free, get their bills paid, and you're the bad guy? And that's one of the things.
You're the guy paying for it. You're not the bad
guy. I know I'm the guy paying for it, because have you seen my fucking tax returns?
No, I haven't seen I haven't seen your tax returns. I've seen you're a very successful small business. Which is, hold on.
How many times?
Let me throw the flowers out at you. Relax.
When I had to go home with a paycheck of $2.36 because
that was out of your pocket, because you actually paid your people what they were worth.
And Obamacare made me have to pay, and I know they're going to go on a tangent for a second.
I know.
I've gone home with a $2.36 paychecks at the end of the week because I had to pay my employees, and because Obamacare and their taxes said, no, you don't get to keep this money. We've got to pay for people that are uninsured. And the argument is, and this is where I get off the rails about this and I get upset. I'm like, wait a second. One of the reasons that Trump got elected, and this is something that no one on the left is willing to concede, and this is where people on the right got upset at the progressives, or whatever you want to call the people on the left, that says, no, you don't get to keep your own money. The state is going to tell you what to do. You don't get any of your individual rights, and we're going to sit there and dictate how much money you can make, where you can spend it, if you can eat if you can drink a big gulp, or whatever you want to have. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. All Trump wants to do is he's cut $20 billion in the last year. $20 billion have in savings just on regulatory enforcement. People don't understand how much what that means to the average person, where a lot. Well, it's not echoing that if it shouldn't, unless you're listening to the show on the back. But again, it goes back to one of the problems that I see, and this is where, again, we could argue about this, but the optics alone dictate how people respond to things. And that's what, and that is where the one part that the left is so good at is they sit there and play. Well, and here the argument has to be at the end of the time, the is that if somebody is telling you a story, regardless of who's telling you, okay, one of the things that people have to that you have to be smart enough to say, why do you believe the way you believe? How did you get the information that you are running into? Because the one problem that I've seen, this is not just an isolated incident. When Nancy Grace was in the parking lot in a split screen, do you remember the story when they split screen CNN's with the other reporter with Nancy Grace? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I remember when that happened. And,
well, here's one of the issues behind it, and this is why this is a dangerous position to be in. One of the problems behind that is they were trying to create a narrative, and when you create a narrative, and a narrative is instead of being news, instead of being complete news, it is their opinion on something. Then they want you to have an opinion. Their opinion is the news story, not the opinion of it. Now I remember what I wanted to go with you. Okay. One of the things I want to cover with you real quick is because we've been on security details, and I want to explain something to people out there. Under Obama, there was a reporter that was kicked off. Her name was Brenda Lee. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I want to explain something to people that are listening, and one of the things that that was not said, and this is something that really bothered me about this. Okay, the area around Air Force One. Okay, it isn't the aircraft by itself. The aircraft alone is not just Air Force One. There's an area around Air Force One that is a perimeter. It is considered part of the airplane, and it extends. Basically, it's called the curtilage. It extends past the wings for a period. I don't know if it's 50 feet or 75 feet, but it is past the wings, onto the red carpet, onto where the tarmac meets, and it is a perimeter around the aircraft that is considered part of Air Force One.
Right.
So when people say she was removed from Air Force One, they're saying, "Oh, she wasn't exactly on the air." No, the aircraft alone is just the aircraft. The perimeter around is considered part of the aircraft.
It's the exclusion zone.
It's the exclusion zone.
Yeah.
And so
and you can extend that exclusion zone depending on where they're at and what kind of hardening you have around it. You can extend that for miles. The exclusion zone can go for 100 miles if they want.
Right, but usually it's within a couple hundred yards, and because there's two details
because of what they do. Right, I get you.
And for the people that are listening, the reason that sometimes the technical aspects are important in a conversation is because people make things up when they don't know the truth or they don't know the technical aspects of it. So the exclusion zone around around Air Force One is considered part of Air Force One, and it doesn't matter whether it is. And usually there's three Secret Service details. There's a detail called the Counter Assault Team. Now that team, usually you're not going to see them. They're in a
cat vehicle. Yeah.
They're in a cat vehicle. They got big weapons.
Yeah.
And you're 9 out of 10 times you are not going to see them.
You're never going to see them unless shit goes so bad that nobody even wants to talk about it on this show right now. Yeah.
Number two is then you have what's called the security detail for the president, which is what they guard the president with. Usually it's between 25 and 30 Secret Service agents.
Many people, it's classified. So yeah.
Yeah, however many people there are. Those are the guys that walk with the president. Then you have what is called the protection detail, which is the ones that set up
before and after. Yeah.
Before and after.
Right.
Now, when one of the arguments has been, and this is why it's important to understand how narratives get made. Brenda Lee was in that area. She was a reporter. Now, this is why. Now, people have argued, well, she wasn't an accredited reporter. Well, okay. Are you saying to me that you're okay with having levels of
Hey, brother. Thanks to what the judge ruled on old fuckstick that likes to interrupt Trump and try to grandstand all day long, and I'm not going to say his name, and don't say it because you're on my stream too.
You're talking about Tom.
That piece of grabastic shit, because of the ruling he got, you and I now can go to the White House and demand passes.
Hey, I understand that, and that's
ridiculous.
And my argument was in this argument was the fact that if you're okay having exclusion classes, okay. Everybody said, "Oh, we need to protect reporters. We need to protect reporters. We need to protect reporters." Okay, well, wait a second. Brenda Lee was a reporter, and
exactly.
You're saying so? Are you saying that there's a threshold of reporting? If that is the case, and if that is the argument in the case, then you should understand that. Okay, we're going to have thresholds. We're going to have exclusion classes. So if you're saying to me that a reporter must have at least a minimum of 1 million followers or 1 million distribution newspapers or subscriptions or whatever, then you're okay with creating exclusion classes.
No, if that is the case, hold on. Let me say this, because when I say it, I'm referring to something you just said, because I know where you're going to go next. If that is the case, then they have just undermined the First fucking Amendment like nobody's business through the court system with lawfare.
Right. And so here's another. So going back to that, and this created a lot of issues with the debate online. We're saying, well, our reporters need to be able to follow the First Amendment. I'm like, no. What you're saying is your reporter is the one that needs to be protected. Not all reporters, but your reporter. Going to the second part of this. If there are only, and unless I think that there's only 35 or 36 there's only 36 outlets that have in the White House press corps, they only have credentials for 36 reporters or 36 outlets.
That's fucking sad.
Now that shows. Now I don't know. I mean, there is a process. You know that if you applied to the White House for press credentials, there is a process behind it, and there should be. But one of the issues that happens, and it happens all the time, is when people create narratives, and when people and what I mean by a narrative, it's their opinion of what is going on, not the truth, not the Walter Cronkite version where they told the truth.
No, Walter Cronkite was the worst with narrative. He's the one who lost the Vietnam War when we were winning it.
The issue is that you can't just believe what people are telling you simply because they're telling you. And I've said this before. I've had conversations on this. I've been wrong. I have a master's in public policy, and I've looked stuff up. I've been wrong.
We both have. But guess what we weren't wrong on? We weren't wrong on Las Vegas. We weren't wrong on Benghazi. We have not been wrong on a whole lot of shit. Hillary, all of it.
And here's one of the issue has to go back to is that if you're not willing to take a look at the facts and say, listen, there are some people out there that just want to tell a story, and they're pretty good at it. One of the things that I'll give you a prime example, something that me and you have discussed numerous times, and is oil right now. The largest producer of oil in the United States is the Permian Basin in Texas. Now, if you would consider the fact that in the near future the Permian Basin is going to outproduce North Dakota, and if somebody would have told you that 5 or 6 years ago under Obama, nobody would believe you. I mean, they're just
nobody would have believed me and you, and they didn't at the time when I told everybody Obama sold a lot of the Aleutian Islands back to Russia.
Well, and one of the things that and one of the problems that also happens, and this is something where it bothers me, and I've had these discussions over the last few years, is that people are very hypocritical when they're looking at information, and instead of saying, hey, listen, it's hard to get along with each other when you're not consistent.
Right.
If somebody is inconsistent in their actions, it's very hard for people to get along. Why? Because you don't know what that's bipolar West Side.
Yes.
I'm going to get drunk in Lincoln Lanes kind of actions, and that but you don't know what you're getting.
But the reality, of it is,
the point that I bring up is that one of the problems is that in one term you're okay with people doing something, in another term you're not okay with them.
Yeah.
In one issue you're okay with. You're saying, okay, we need to let's bring in immigration back. Talk about this about immigration. If you're saying we need to bring in people here into the United States, and one of the things I suggested, and people just railed against me, was what's our quota for immigration this year? 1 million.
That's
1 million a year.
So we'll depopulate faster. No, look, hold on. You hijacked what I was trying to say.
Hey, Shuffy.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You hijacked what I wanted to say. I tried to say it, and you cut me off.
I couldn't hear you, bro.
Oh, okay. Anyways, when you were going on about how everything's disconnected and disjointed and everybody wants a fact check, right?
Right.
Here's the issue. Snopes. Look where their funding first originally came from. Facebook. Look what their funding first originally came from. All this stuff. Wikipedia. Annenberg Foundation. We can look all through this, but see, you're not going to find that in Snopes. It's always going to be dismissed. Google has now admitted through their CEO crying that they didn't get the outcome they wanted in the last presidential election. So now they're altering the algorithms. So you believe what you want by looking up what you want. But the thing is, as long as you have the base source material, there's one thing I was looking up today for this show, and it was on immigration, and I wanted to hear it or see the original thing. And it was a 1791 Immigration Act.
Right.
And here's what it actually reads. all white men of good character, all white free peoples. It's not even men. It might be men. Damn it! I had to shut it down when my computer just collapsed. Of good morals, right?
Right.
So they used that when I was talking about the Chinese thing that happened. I can't even remember. We started out with it. You guys can listen back to it. I can't remember it now. Remember, I pull those pages down as I find them. They use that to file a claimant on bringing the body to court, right? Here's my issue with this. So institutional knowledge is really the only way. And as intelligent as we've gotten with all this social media and everything, we become more ignorant. And
do you think it's? Let me ask you this: do you think it's ignorance or do you think it's laziness? Because I'm going to tell you this.
Ignorance because I think it's ignorance. I'm going to tell you why. I think it's ignorance because I know you and we passed our knowledge to our sons. How many other families do that? How many others have had the experience globally with our own 2 feet on the fucking ground in a war zone where people are trying to kill us and hunt us, and we're trying to hunt them? And veterans, you all know what I'm talking about right now. How many people are going to pass this on to their children in a way their children can deal with it and understand the realities of this existence? Instead, we all live in Facebook land. We all live on YouTube, which I'm social media just like you guys are. But guess what? I don't take it too seriously. I'll fucking go for the long troll. Don't think I won't, but I'll also be honest. I'm not going to play games. I'm not going to lie. I don't need to.
Right, but I think here's the thing. I think let's break that down for a second. What you just said. One of the problems that you have, and especially with the Trump administration, has been that he is your family doctor that is going to tell you what is wrong with you, and then you're upset that he's telling you, hey, pick one. You have heart disease. Stop smoking and stop, doing crazy shit. Get off the couch and go exercise. But I don't want to. Right. Okay. Here's the thing. Going back to the immigration and customs, when China
are your enablers.
Well, hold on. Let me finish my point and then go ahead and retort. When China was enforcing some of the tariffs and our products getting over into China, and Trump says, listen, you need to have an open economy. Otherwise, we're going to impose tariffs here. And people were like, oh, he's hurting, he's hurting everybody here. But guess what? In 2 years or within 18 months, we're all going to overtake China as the leading manufacturing economy in the world. That's not by accident.
He brought them to the hill.
Right. And so one of the problems that I have is that people are more willing to go, fall into this orange man bad, but he's sitting there doing what he said he was going to do. When was the last time you heard of an ISIS attack? Why? Because he told James Mattis, our Lord and Savior, that that basically when he was Department of Defense, he took the gloves off. He says he basically did an Al Capone. I want them dead. I want their families dead. I want to come in home. I want to go to their house in the middle of the night. I want to piss on their ashes. And guess what? The first thing that Madison did is he loosened the rules of engagement and said, go after these guys. And guess what? When you loosen the rules of engagement in combat, it doesn't get your guys killed. That's the one thing.
That's what saves your guys. Look, I just got back from Afghanistan. You know this. I called into your goddamn show. I mean, bro, we've talked. and I haven't been able to do my show until I got back, just because of reasons. But the thing is once he told Mattis that, straight up biz, ODA taking out, going out with the Afghan commandos, some straight up killing motherfuckers right now, and they ain't playing games. And I haven't seen this kind of intensity since 2008, because in 2009, by that time, Obama had reined them in because he was a Muslim, homosexual, married to Michael.
Okay, stop. Okay, now you're reaching.
I'm gonna do
you're
this.
You're reaching.
You know
you're reaching.
You know I'm
you're reaching.
Read.
Stop.
You know I'm
okay.
Gonna, hey, but how much? Hey, hold on.
You're mad at him because he's an Irishman. You're mad.
No, I'm not. I'm a Dago, so I don't worry about him. But hey, the funniest part, dude, I'm trying to bring some levity to this bullshit. What I'm saying is, how much in the past you and I have talked about, and you've said you followed me down rabbit holes, but you didn't want to go there, but you did, because we're brothers. How much have I been wrong on, George?
A couple things.
I'm not saying Michael and all that bullshit.
No, but a lot of it. Here's the thing. Here's one of the things. And I'm going to tell you my issue with him. He restrained
our military, right?
Military. Then at the same time, he is carpet bombing hospitals in Pakistan. One of he bombed a hospital in Pakistan, which took out all the medical care for 35 miles around in an area, killed 57 Pakistanis,
doctors too, and nurses.
He killed 3 doctors and what was it, like 18 kids? And then you're sitting there going, wait a second, he's bombing people with the drones.
And where'd the left's anti-war people go? They disappeared under Obama.
Yeah.
You didn't hear anybody protest the war. You didn't see the news show death figures every day, did you?
No, and the other thing too. So do you remember? And this is why again we're going off the deep end, but I think we need to have this conversation too. There was when in Iraq there was a movement in Tikrit, okay, and there was. I've had some, Scott Wolf has been on the show, and he talked about Erbil and all of the places where ISIS had formed. Had under the Obama administration just said, hey, listen, we're going to send some ODA guys in, clean up the mess, go after these guys, and we're not going to have the issues. Maybe right. ISIS doesn't take hold of in some of the places in Tikrit, in Erbil, and some of those other places, and run around and causing catastrophic damage because you're not worried about a punitive expedition.
No, I'll tell you why. He did send ODA in, dude. I'm going to tell you this for a fact, and I'm not going to tell you how I know. I'm not going to tell you how I know. I'm just going to tell you for a fact what happened. He sent ODA in. And they did help the free Syrians, which were still Muslim Brotherhood and all that. I'm not getting into all that. But ISIS now, we're being funded by the CIA. Our Air Force is really good at certain things. One of them is dropping gear to you. How many times under Obama, fact check this, guys, you'll find it every time it happened. We dropped arms and ammunition into ISIS accidentally. Air quotes given. There's no accidents in that. It was done purposefully. And our soldiers had to fight them, along with Hillary the cunt, her little shit in Benghazi. The arms deal.
Well, let me ask you this. Riddle me this there, Batman. How did ISIS get H&K 416s?
There's only one way, and you know that way.
I mean, seriously, and I know you're not a Hillary fan, but before I don't want to go off that rail because we'll be here all night. But one of the things I want to point out is that ISIS, okay, the H&K 416 is only available to and correct me if I'm wrong there, Shuffy, but the HK 416 is not available to the general population in the package that they had dropped, correct?
Correct. You're talking the belt-fed version, right?
Yeah. Now there are you can buy the H&K 416. You can buy it. There's a civilian version of it. That's not. But the belt-fed one is only available to
military only. Law enforcement can't even buy them. I mean, if you're a machine gun manufacturer, and you want to have a post sample, you can produce it to maybe improve on it and maybe sell it to the U.S. government. But LEOs, belt feds, are pretty much not going to be sold to.
Right. And so they had one of the issues that happened, and especially again where we're sitting there talking about optics. When you're taking a look at pictures of ISIS, and they've got Toyotas from, where did they get those from? When you're taking a look at them, and a guy in Texas who traded in his Toyota, and they showed them on TV, and he showed them on TV, and he had to sue them to go and he had to sue the dealership where he traded it in. That isn't happening by accident. And again, it goes back to here's the thing that it goes back to, and this is what you are seeing isn't necessarily the truth. What you're seeing is a version of the truth or a manufactured narrative that they want you to see. And that is what makes getting news so damn hard in this country. And
they give you what you want. They give you what you want. Back in the old days, in the 80s, Fine Young Cannibals or Natalie Merchant, I can't remember which one, but she had a song. Hey, give them what they want.
Well, and one of the other issues too is that you take a look at even our Congress and the press and everybody else. What they say they're going to do and what gets done, or what the version of it is not even.
It never matches.
It never matches. And I'll give you an example.
But Trump, what he promised and he said he's doing, it's matching. He's been stymied. Think about how badly he's been stymied, more than any other president. Obama never had any pushback. This guy's had pushback. Obama never had any pushback. Don't even try to go there with me on anything. Even when the Republicans came in, they cucked to him like a fucking man letting another man bang his wife. They were serious cucks to him. And that's why Lindsey Graham, when he showed his balls during the Kavanaugh hearing, everybody was shocked. Because they weren't used to seeing the neocons. And it's because McCain died. That piece of garbage.
Well, and one of the
let me finish. So he had no pushback. Reagan got pushback, but not like this man. This man from day one, the resist, all that bullshit went on with him. And he has still gotten a majority of his stuff going through. People don't realize they're building components to the walls now that has been funded. It just hasn't been erected because that part of the funding Congress held up through the cuck Republicans. Think about who controlled the purse strings. Write your Republicans before they're out and say release the rest of the funds, build the wall, and the Democrats won't be able to stop it after they're sworn in. And you'll get what you wanted.
Well, and I think one of the other issues that's on hand, because I want to spend the last few minutes, I want to cover the last part of it, is, and let's just finish up with the immigration debate. Number one is Okay, because I know we've kind of, we've gone off the rails a little bit discussing everything, but one of the things is, again, going back to what has caused all of this is the fact that people did not want to follow the law. That's number one. That is and again, there are processes, and if you're saying, and one of the reasons this is happening with the wall and the people that are crossing the border, and why you're not being told the truth is they want you to think that the administration is bad. In the last, I don't know when the last time is, but I'm going to say since 1952, we have always repelled people coming across the borders illegally.
Of course. I did it on the northern border. You know that.
Yeah, and it hasn't, this has been going on for 50 years. It isn't anything new. We've repelled people. Not rocket science. We have had measures for asylum and refugees for the last 100 years. We've brought in refugees from countries all over the world. We've had the Coast Guard has had numerous times
codified for over 100 years.
100 years. Codified what a refugee is, what an asylum seeker is.
Right.
We have had ports of entry in the United States, even in our controlling territories, because one of the things that we should have touched on this a little bit more, but the U.S. Virgin Islands has had places there where if you landed there, you could have sought both asylum and refugee status.
Because U.S. Virgin Islands is a territory of ours.
Right, even in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
We've had asylum seekers in Puerto Rico that have showed up, and we have given them
Haitians, prime example.
Haitians, and when was the year that they had the coup? Not in the Dominican, in the island of Dominica, we had there was a coup and people had left. So the idea of them being able to to come up and say, hey, listen, we're able to process you has not, this has been an ongoing thing. So I think this idea that we're just shooting at refugees coming across the border, because we just don't like them, is just not true. Number two, there's different
shooting at them. We're shooting pepper balls,
right,
and we're shooting pepper spray, and we're keeping them from coming over non-hardened portions, which this should have been solved. Reagan, remember when Reagan got the first amnesty, and that's what they're trying to push again.
Right.
They were supposed to build a wall then. Why are you not holding people like Schumer, all these other fuckers that have been there that long?
And here's the thing: you create sanctuary cities, which then says, listen, America would be more willing to have this debate or have a better debate of saying, listen, if people are here illegally, let's figure out a way to solve that part first.
Sanctuary city, prime example. Kate Steinle, who was killed.
Hold on. I don't want to. It's an anecdote.
It's not an anecdote. It's what happened. You brought up.
I understand, but I'm not talking about one. I'm sitting there.
You brought up.
Yes, she was killed.
And then what happened after she was killed?
I'll concede any. Hold on. Shut it. I will concede every fucking point on the Kate Steinle thing. I do not want to be that as a center. I'm saying if we have 11 million people here in the United States, we have 11 million here illegally. If one of those does something illegal, fine. I'm saying, what do we do with 11 million people here? That's the argument.
We go through. It's not an argument. We go through them. We vet them. And we send those that are undesirable back to where they're from. And the others, we'll figure out what to do with them as we find out about them. It's the only justifiable way. It's 11 million. It's going to take a long time, but we got to build the wall, deport the ones that are problematic.
Right.
Keep the ones that want to assimilate. If they're
Because
flying a Mexican or a Venezuelan flag in their front yard, we don't want them. If they're flying an ISIS flag in their front yard, don't want them. They're not going to ever assimilate. They're done. They go home.
My issue with this is the following. We have whatever amount of illegal aliens we have here. Let's find a system that says, okay, listen, we keep the ones that are here, that we want to keep here. Let's say that the number is 10 million. But what we cannot do is we can't take
10 million.
Whatever that number is. Okay, 5 million, 2 million, whatever that number is. We let them stay here and give them a path to citizenship. But at the same time, we can't let the borders not be protected and say we're just going to, because that creates discourse and craziness on the border.
And what's going to happen, this is what they're pushing. You and I both know this, so I'm not jumping the shark on anything. The Bubba effect. The Bubba effect, simply for people that don't know it, and we're all veterans, so I'm hoping most of you guys know this. You've trained for it, or at least have heard about it. The Bubba effect is, I have a twin sister. Let's say she goes in, and let's say 9/11 happened, and she's in that tower, and all of a sudden it falls down on her, right? It didn't happen. I'm just giving her for instance. And let's say I'm so gripped with anger and grief, which I'm not, and I'm so angry and griefful that I want to go take it out on somebody. So I go down to the local 7-Eleven, which we don't have any in Ohio, so that's not going to happen. This is all for instance. And there happens to be a guy who's wearing a turban. He would normally be called a Sikh, but I'm an ignorant hillbilly from Ohio, so I don't know this. And I go in and I shoot him because he's got a towel on his head. Now, they've got me shooting him on video. Everything's clear and present and this, that, and the other. But all my neighbors know me. And so the federal government or the police, the sheriff even, shows up to arrest me. All my neighbors and everybody collapses on me and says, you didn't protect his sister. All he did was fucking get retribution for his sister. That's the Bubba effect. That's the spark they're looking for. And that's why the border's being left porous, is they want something to happen on that fucking border with some fucking Americans going down there with their guns and fucking laying waste to people. And this is what the dynamic has been made.
And that scares me. And that's the last thing we want to happen.
I know.
And I think in closing, here we've got 4 minutes left, and I think in closing we've got to say one thing. This is the one thing. It is, we have to, at the end of the day, we have to say that if we don't protect our country and say it's a country of laws, and we have to protect it by saying, hey, listen, this is a nation of laws. We have to protect what is important to us, but not only what's important to us, but at the same time saying, if you're willing to accommodate and work within the law system, we're willing to work with you. But the minute that you start saying, well, we're only going to pick the laws that you get a chance, we're only going to work with the laws that we agree with, then it doesn't work for anybody.
What was the thing, us dumb hillbillies, your Greek educated ass, my fucking Dago German American educated ass, and you're a Greek American, by the way. I didn't mean to slight you, brother.
I'm a Marine American. Shut the fuck up, boot.
Yeah. So here's the thing, baby. What I'm saying is, we learned this in elementary school, and somehow all these educated lawyers forgot it. One nation of law for all people, great and small. That means the greatest, Donald Trump, if he fucks up, if Hillary Clinton fucks up, she's going to prison just like I would or you would. And that is a fact. And when we've lost that, we've lost everything as Americans. And guess what? You know who's only going to get fucking punished? You and me, baby. You and me. And I love you.
I love you too, Chuck. Hey,
this is the spirited debate we have, folks, all the time. And you just got a taste of our conversation. On Kaisers Kastle, I mirrored this. And I happen to be on VRS, Veterans Radio Syndicate.
So we've got to. Hey, I've got to. Not to cut you off, but we have another show coming on there. Shuff, it's always a pleasure arguing with you. Semper Fi, thank you for your input, and we'll catch you next time. Shuff, it's always a pleasure arguing with you. Semper Fi, thank you for your input. And we'll catch you next time. And I want to close in saying this. Me and him had a heated debate, and we've had these all the time. But again, at the same time, we could have a heated debate and be respectful of each other, and at least listen to each other. Thank you for listening to the Bear Newz. Thank you for listening to the Veteran Radio Syndicate family, and stay tuned for our next broadcast. And we will catch you next. We will catch you next time. For our next broadcast, and we will catch you.